Ever feel like the term software developer is kind of vague? Like you hear about coding ninjas and tech wizards, but what are they actually doing all day?
It's funny you mention that because it is kind of like a black box, isn't it?
Totally. So get ready to have that box busted wide open because today we're diving headfirst into the world of software development.
And I'll tell you right now, it's way
Yeah.
more than just, sitting at a computer typing away.
Way more. We've got some awesome resources from RoleCatcher.com to guide us their career guide, interview prep materials, even their job search platform.
You've got the inside scoop.
They do. And one of the things that jumped out at me is that software developer isn't just one thing anymore, is it?
Oh, absolutely not. And that's what makes it so fascinating, right? It's
Yeah.
this constantly evolving field. Like having a degree is great, but it's not the be all and end all.
So true. So what's the secret sauce then?
It's all about combining that formal education with real world experience, like getting your hands dirty with actual projects and this commitment to constantly learning and adapting.
That makes total sense. So let's dive into the nitty-gritty. What are these software developers actually doing all day? Rolecatcher uses some pretty action-packed verbs to describe their work. We're talking analyzing, designing, testing, debugging.
Right? It's like they're digital architects, engineers, and problem solvers all rolled into one.
I love that. And speaking of problem solving, this is a team game, right? You're not just off in a silo somewhere coding by yourself.
No way. And honestly, that's a huge part of what makes this career so dynamic. You need those hardcore technical skills, for
Yeah.
sure. But then you layer on top of that serious communication, collaboration, like the ability to explain what you're doing to someone who doesn't speak code.
It's like those group projects back in school, except with way higher stakes.
Exactly. And hopefully a lot less procrastination.
Speaking of high stakes, let's get real for a second. Our Rolecatcher sources don't sugarcoat it. This career path isn't all sunshine and rainbows. They're upfront about the potential downside stress, long hours, and this constant pressure to stay ahead of the curve.
And you know what? That's actually really refreshing. Because going in with a realistic view is crucial. I mean, think about it. The Bureau of Labor Statistics projects something like 22% job growth for software developers over the next decade.
That's huge.
It is. It's massive. But those high-demand, high-reward roles, they often come with a price. Understanding those potential downsides helps you figure out if you're cut out for it.
So it's not just about chasing the big paycheck, it's about finding a career that genuinely fits your personality and your lifestyle.
100%. Now, are you ready for the fun part? This is where it gets really cool.
Hit me with it.
Software development isn't a one-size-fits-all career. It's not like you're a software developer, this is what you do, end of story. It's way more nuanced than that. You can specialize.
Oh, tell me more.
So we're talking artificial intelligence, cybersecurity. You can even climb the ranks to become a CTO. There's so many different avenues you can explore.
It's like choosing your own adventure. I love that. It reminds me of those books we used to read as kids, remember?
Yes, you get to decide which path you want to take.
So how do you even begin to navigate all of those options? Like, let's say you're fascinated by the idea of artificial intelligence. Where do you even start?
Well, I think a lot of people assume you need a computer science degree, right?
Yeah.
And while that's definitely one way in, RoleCatcher highlights something really interesting. People in this field come from all sorts of backgrounds. We're talking physics majors, data science gurus.
Really? I never would have guessed that.
I know. There are even a few former history buffs in there who decided to trade in their textbooks for lines of code.
So it's not just about the piece of paper you have, it's about your passion, your willingness to learn, your ability to think like a coder.
Exactly. Think of a degree as a foundation. To really excel, you need to build on that with real-world experience, internships, personal projects, even contributing to those open source projects everyone's always talking about.
Hold on, rewind for a sec. Open source projects. What are those exactly? I feel like I should know that, but...
Oh, it's no problem. Imagine a bunch of developers from all over the world, all coming together online to collaborate on a software project. And they make the code freely available for anyone to use, modify, distribute.
Oh, interesting.
That's open source in a nutshell. It's like a giant collaborative coding jam session where everyone benefits from each other's expertise.
That's so cool. So you could theoretically learn from the best in the business just by jumping into these projects. Talk about a free education.
Precisely. It's a fantastic way to gain experience, build your portfolio, and connect with other passionate developers.
It's like a win-win-win.
Exactly. And speaking of gaining an edge, Remember those interview prep resources we mentioned earlier?
Oh, yeah, RoleCatcher's secret weapon. They've got this AI-powered interview tool that boasts over 120,000 interview questions.
Can you believe that? 120,000? It's like they've thought of every single question an interviewer could possibly throw at you.
It's mind-blowing, but I get why it's so important. The old days of just memorizing generic answers are over, right?
Totally. This AI thing dives deep, like analyzes specific job descriptions and company cultures, even helps you craft tailored responses that highlight your unique skills. It's about being prepared, not just regurgitating some canned answer.
So it's less about memorization and more about showcasing what makes you stand out from the crowd.
That's exactly it.
It's like having a personal interview coach in your pocket. So let's say you nail the interview, land the job. That's it, right? You're good to go.
Oh gosh, no. If anything, that's just the beginning. The learning never really stops in this field. New technologies are popping up all the time, new programming languages, new frameworks. It's constantly evolving.
So how does one navigate this ever-changing landscape? What's the career progression like for a software developer?
Well, you're in luck, because RoleCatcher has us covered there too. They've laid out what they call a career ladder, 6 stages, starting with junior developer and going all the way up to, drumroll please, CTO.
Wow, CTO. From coding newbie to tech industry leader. That's amazing.
Right. And what's really cool is that they break down each stage. They show you the responsibilities, the skills you need to develop. It's like a roadmap for your career.
It's like taking a sneak peek into the future of your career.
Mm.
So you can start to envision yourself in those roles, see what resonates with you, right?
And that visualization can be incredibly powerful. It's one thing to say, oh, I want to be a senior software engineer someday, but it's another to really understand what that entails, to see how someone else has actually walked that path.
It makes the goal feel more real, more attainable. Like, okay, I can see myself doing that.
Exactly. And it helps you figure out what steps you need to take today to get there.
Speaking of steps, let's talk about those specializations we touched on earlier. Remember how we were saying it's not just one size fits all?
Right.
Okay, so we were talking about those different choose your own adventure paths in software development. Let's say someone's super into artificial intelligence. What's that actually look like in the real world?
Well, that's where those cool job titles really start to branch out, you know.
Yeah.
You could be like a software developer specializing in AI, sure. But you could also be a machine learning engineer, a data scientist.
Yeah.
It's less about the name on your LinkedIn profile and more about the problems you're actually tackling.
So it's about finding the right tools for the job, the right coding tools to build those AI-powered solutions. What's an example of a project an AI developer might work on?
Okay, let's say you're working for a company that's building self-driving cars.
Yeah, very cool.
As an AI-focused developer, you might be the one building those algorithms that help the car actually see and interpret its surroundings. Or maybe you're working on the natural language processing side of things so the car can understand voice commands from the passengers.
Whoa, that's straight out of a sci-fi movie. It's mind-blowing to think that software developers are literally shaping the future, how we live, how we work, even how we drive. But all these advancements,
Yeah.
it does make you wonder.
Are we all going to be replaced by robots?
Exactly. Is that the future of work? Will there even be jobs left for us humans?
It's the million-dollar question.
Right.
But if we look at what RoleCatcher is saying, one thing's for sure, the software developer role is definitely evolving. It's not going away anytime soon. The key is adaptability, that willingness to learn new things, roll with the punches, and work alongside those emerging technologies.
So it's less about fearing the robots and more about, befriending them, or at least learning how to code them.
Exactly.
Now, while we're on the topic of future-proofing your career, our sources at RoleCatcher mentioned certifications. What's the deal with those? Are those actually necessary? Do they really move the needle?
Think of certifications like a badge of honor in the coding world.
Okay, I like that.
It shows potential employers that you've gone the extra mile to master a specific technology, a certain skill set. It's a way to stand out from the crowd. It says, hey, I'm serious about this stuff. I'm not messing around.
It's like leveling up your character in a video game. You unlock those new abilities, gain new skills,
Right.
and you become an even more epic coding rock star.
I love that analogy.
Wow.
And just like in those games, some certifications definitely hold more weight than others. So it's smart to do your research, figure out which ones align with your goals.
Strategic decision-making. I like it.
Yeah.
So we've talked a lot about the skills, those specializations, but what about the day-to-day reality? Paint me a picture. What's it actually like to be a software developer?
But one thing's for sure, it's never boring. One day you might be totally heads down, laser focused on writing code. The next day, you're brainstorming solutions with your team, whiteboarding ideas, debating the best approach.
It sounds like you need to be comfortable switching gears, right? From solo deep dives to really intense collaboration.
Absolutely, and that's something a lot of people don't realize about this field, even though we're talking about tech. Communication is key. You'll be interacting with colleagues, clients, even explaining complex stuff to people who, like, barely know how to turn their computer on.
So you need to be a coding whiz and a communication ninja.
I love that. Yes, a coding whiz who can explain what they're doing in a way that makes sense to everyone. And let's not forget, the heart of this whole thing is problem solving, right? Oftentimes, the biggest challenges aren't about writing some perfect line of code. It's about understanding the user's needs and finding elegant, efficient solutions. Solutions that make people's lives easier or more productive, or even just a little more fun.
It's about using technology to make a real impact, big or small.
Exactly.
But let's be real. It can't all be smooth sailing in the world of software development, right? What are some of the challenges someone should be prepared for if they're considering this career?
Well, we already talked about the potential for stress, those long hours,
No.
especially when deadlines are looming. But beyond that, it's a field that demands continuous learning. New technologies are always popping up, new languages, new frameworks. It's like the learning never stops.
It's like that saying, the only constant is change.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you're someone who thrives on challenge, who genuinely loves learning new things, who's not afraid to really dig in and solve complex problems, well, then this might just be the perfect field for you.
It's about having that growth mindset, that insatiable curiosity to just dive into this world.
I love that.
But you don't have to do it alone, right? I'd imagine having a support system is super crucial in this field.
Oh, 100%. And that's something that our RoleCatcher material emphasizes too, the importance of networking and community.
Okay, let's talk about that for a sec. Because building a network in any field can be intimidating, especially when you're just starting out. What advice would you give to someone who wants to connect with other developers but isn't even sure where to begin?
Honestly, there are so many ways to connect these days. Online communities, local meetups, conferences. There's a whole world of passionate developers out there who are, like, eager to share their knowledge and support each other.
It's about finding your people, right? Those who speak your language, understand your struggles, celebrate your wins.
Exactly. And honestly, don't underestimate online platforms like RoleCatcher. They're not just about job hunting. They've created a space where developers can connect, learn, grow together.
It's like having a virtual water cooler. You can chat about the latest trends, share tips, maybe even find your next coding buddy.
Exactly.
Okay, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Salary. We all know the tech industry is known for competitive pay. But what can someone realistically expect to earn as a software developer?
That's the question everyone wants answered, right? Unfortunately, those RoleCatcher excerpts we have, they don't really get into specific numbers.
Ah, bummer.
Yeah.
But I get it. Salaries can be all over the map, depending on experience, location, specialization.
Oh, absolutely. And the size of the company, what industry they're in, it's super variable.
So many factors.
But here's the good news. There are tons of resources out there that can give you a better idea of those industry benchmarks. Websites like Glassdoor, Salary.com.
Yeah.
They let you see what others in similar roles are making based on all those factors we just talked about.
So you can walk into that interview feeling confident, knowing your worth.
Exactly. Knowledge is power, right?
Okay.
Especially when it comes to negotiating salary.
100%. Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about work-life balance. Is that even a thing in the world of software development?
That is the million-dollar question.
Mm.
And I hate to say it depends, but it really depends.
On what? Spill the tea. What are the deciding factors here?
Well, company culture is huge. Some tech companies are, like, notorious for their work hard, play hard mentality, which often means long hours, blurred boundaries.
That's intense.
Yeah, it can be. But then on the flip side, you've got companies that really prioritize work-life balance. They offer flexible schedules, maybe even remote work options, and a culture that truly respects personal time.
So how do you sniff those companies out? What should someone be looking for, say, during a job interview?
Don't be afraid to ask direct questions about their work-life balance policies. What are they doing to support employee well-being? That kind of thing.
It's about knowing your needs and advocating for yourself.
Exactly. Remember, you're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you.
It's all about finding that right fit, a company that values your skills and respects your boundaries.
100%.
Now, looking ahead, what are some of the biggest trends shaping the software development world? What should people be paying attention to?
Well, we've already touched on the rise of AI, but that's just one piece of the puzzle, right?
Hmm.
Cybersecurity is another huge growth area. And then there's this whole movement towards low-code and no-code platforms.
Wait, back up for a sec. Low code and no code. Does that mean coding is becoming obsolete?
No, not at all. But it does signal a shift in the role of a developer. These platforms make it easier for people with, limited coding experience to build simple applications, but they still require a certain way of thinking. You still need that logical, problem-solving mindset to use them effectively.
So it's less about writing every single line of code from scratch and more about understanding the logic, the architecture, the overall flow of how things work.
Exactly. Think of it like this. You don't need to be a master carpenter to assemble a piece of IKEA furniture, but you do need to be able to follow instructions, maybe problem solve when something doesn't quite fit.
That's a perfect analogy. So these low-code and no-code platforms might change how certain tasks are done, but they don't eliminate the need for those core software development skills.
Exactly. If anything, it highlights the importance of adaptability. The developers who will really thrive in the years to come are the ones who can embrace new tools, learn new ways of working, and constantly evolve alongside the industry.
It's about being a lifelong learner, always curious, always pushing the boundaries. So for all those aspiring software developers out there, the ones who are feeling fired up and ready to dive in, what's the one piece of advice you'd give them?
Don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. Explore different areas, experiment with different programming languages, build something, break something, figure out how to fix it. The best way to learn is by doing.
Embrace the journey, the challenges, the aha moments, all of it. And remember, you don't have to do it alone. And that's where communities like RoleCatcher can be so valuable, right? It's like having this built-in support system, people who get it.
Totally.
Okay, before we wrap up our deep dive into the world of software developers, there's one more thing I'm curious about: the work environment. Is it all like beanbag chairs and ping pong tables like you see in those tech company commercials?
Well, those places do exist,
Little bit.
but honestly, the work environment for a software developer is as diverse as the field itself.
Mm.
You might be in a bustling open plan office, headphones on, deep in code, or maybe you're at a standing desk collaborating with your team. And then there's this whole other group, the remote developers. They're working from coffee shops, home offices, beaches in Bali, you name it.
So that cliche of the solitary coder hunched over their keyboard in a dark basement, that's not always accurate.
Not at all. Collaboration is huge in today's development world.
Hmm.
Remember those action verbs RoleCatcher used? Analyzing, designing, testing. You're not doing those things in a vacuum. You're interacting with designers, project managers, other developers, even clients sometimes.
Right. It takes a village to raise a line of code.
Something like that.
So those communication skills we talked about, those are non-negotiable.
100%. And here's something else to keep in mind. As you move up that career ladder, you might find yourself taking on more leadership responsibilities. Think about those CTOs we talked about. They're probably not writing code every day,
Yeah, that makes sense.
but they are leading teams of developers, setting the technical strategy, making sure everything aligns with the business goals.
So you could start as a coding whiz and end up as a tech industry leader.
Exactly. It's a pretty amazing career path if you think about it.
It really is. Okay, before we let our listeners go, what's one piece of wisdom you'd offer to someone just starting their coding journey?
Honestly, don't be afraid to fail. I know that sounds kind of counterintuitive, but in this field, mistakes are inevitable.
Oh, yeah.
That's how you learn. The key is to embrace those challenges. Experiment. Don't get discouraged. Every line of code, every bug you fix, every single project, it's all a step forward.
It's all part of the journey.
Exactly. And it's a pretty incredible journey to be on.
Well said. And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the world of software developers. Hopefully, you've learned a ton about what they do, the skills they need, and maybe even feel inspired to start writing some code yourself.
And don't forget, resources like RoleCatcher are out there to help you every step of the way, from crafting the perfect resume to acing those interviews and beyond.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Until next time, happy coding, everyone.